Hello, everyone. I'm Harrison.
And I'm Rachel.
This week, we're talking about how we chose our baby's name. So stay tuned and join us on our journey to meet
Meet
Baby
Baby
H.
H. Yay, so we are on episode 6. This one is going to be fun because we're talking about our baby and their name.
There's a lot of pressure when you're choosing your baby's name because they have to live with that name the rest of their life and form their identity around it.
But we're here today to share the names we have picked out for a boy or a girl and how we came up with them.
So when we were going through baby names, we both really liked presidential names or older names. So for a boy, we primarily looked at a list of the US presidents, and for a girl, we spent a lot of time going through first ladies.
We also liked the idea of using a family name or part of our own name somehow and spent some time gathering genealogy from both sides of our family.
Yeah, which was pretty fun because my grandpa on my dad's side has spent a lot of time going through all of our family history. So we just reached out to them before they even knew we were trying to see if they had any genealogy or just a list of the family names. And they had so much of it. It was just insane.
And we also like older sounding names, like vintage names. And so looking through a list of your family history is really helpful when you want to figure out those older sounding names.
Yeah, when we were going through all of our family history, we were really surprised at how quick you can get back to like the 1600s. And we probably spent one evening with my grandpa going through all of this family stuff, filling things out on ancestry.com. And it was pretty crazy because ancestry.com will like suggest people that might be in your family tree based on documents that they have collected. But he could do it faster than all of the computers could. So we would be sitting there and be like, does this name sound familiar? And he could spit out who they were, where they lived, and just some interesting stories about them, which was really fun.
My aunt had spent some time doing the same thing for my side of the family. So my parents already had a list of our genealogy printed out at home.
Yeah, it was nice to look through a lot of those names because they are older and we know that we liked that. And it just was a good starting place. And ultimately, we ended up not really going with a family name, but a lot of the names that we found did kind of lead to more along the lines of what we ended up picking. We also wanted to make sure that it sounded good with our names. So Rachel spent a lot of time writing our names down and then the babies just to see how they all would fit together.
Yeah, I have pages and pages of me writing Harrison, Rachel, baby name.
Yeah, Rachel really seems to like how it is written down. One of the names she was really set on it being spelled a certain way because she just liked the way that it looked. And I just had to keep reminding her, like, you're not going to be the one writing it. Somebody else is, so it might not look that way. To me, it mattered less how it looked, but I wanted to make sure that I could yell it and it was good.
And I would also say their full name, like first, middle, last, and then say just their first and last, because I feel like when parents are deciding their baby's name, they're just saying first, middle, last all the time and don't even think that most people aren't going to use the baby's middle name. And when they're, given an award or, at school, they're just going to be called by their first and last name.
Yeah, I kind of feel like your middle name, even though it's important, it's on your birth certificate and all these other things, it really becomes more of a fun fact because people just don't use it. Normally, you like write down your initials and people are like, oh, what is your middle name? And it's just something that people know but don't ever really use.
And you also have to think about potential nicknames that people will try to give to that baby.
Yeah, and I'm not a huge fan of nicknames that sound like the person's name. So my name is Harrison, and I hate being called Harry. And I actually don't respond to it. But if somebody called me a different nickname that didn't sound like my name, I don't really seem to have a huge problem with that.
Like, I call you Mister.
Yes. That was something big for us that we kind of talked a lot about.
So our boy's name is Edison Clark. And we had this name picked before we even got pregnant. I hear a lot of people say that picking a boy name is very hard for them. But for us, we actually had the opposite problem. Picking a boy name was very easy for us.
Yeah, we probably had talked about it a few times before we even had gotten married, just names in general. And we never really seemed to have a hard time with boy names. It was girl names that were just absolutely brutal. But Edison is not a presidential name, but it is definitely an older sounding name. Most people, when they hear it, probably will think of Thomas Edison. And we will spell it that way. So it will be Edison. And that was a point of contention for a little while between Rachel and I, because she really wanted to spell it Eddison. And I just wasn't a fan of it.
Yeah. I also liked the name Lincoln or Jefferson, but they weren't as appealing to me as Edison was.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure that we picked a name that wasn't like hard to say or like really obscure, but was also a name that you want to see that just everybody has that name. It's not super common, and over the past couple of years, you can see that there is a little bit more popularity in the name Lincoln. One of the things that we were a little unsure about with Edison is a nickname. Like, I really don't want him to be called Ed or Eddie, things like that. And really, I think we just came to the conclusion, like, you're not really going to be able to control that with your kid. They're going to be called what they want to be called. But just knowing that we're not going to call them that, I think was enough.
I also like the name Harrison, but obviously that one's taken.
Yeah, and I didn't really want a kid that had the same name as me. My dad is the third, and it always has been so complicated when you have more than one of the same person in the name, and everybody ends up calling you a weird nickname anyway, so it just wasn't something that I was super interested in.
Yeah. We discovered the name Edison by watching a show called Scandal. And on that show, there's a character named Edison, and he runs for president. And so that was kind of my first exposure to Edison as a somewhat presidential strong name. And I really liked it. But, you know, when we were watching that show, having kids was not on our mind at all. So I think it was just kind of in the back of my mind.
Yeah, and our kid will not be named after this character in Scandal. I don't really understand that whole, oh, you named him after this random person, because ultimately you want your kid to be their own person. It's just that we liked the way that Edison sounded. We liked the way the letters fit together, and that's what we wanted to call our kid.
And it goes well with Harrison. Like, in Harrison's family, there's a lot of names that end in son.
Yeah.
But I just like that, you know, Harrison, Edison, it goes well together.
Yeah, my mom is going to have a brutal time because she's always mixing up my name and my brother's name. So it's probably only going to get worse.
The middle name that we have picked out is Clark, which is Harrison's middle name. And I liked Clark as a first name. And I think that is how your parents found it originally too. But I just liked Edison more.
Yeah, I could be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure that there was somebody in my family's history that had the name Clark and had Harrison as a middle name, and they just liked it better the other way. Rachel's family for a while has passed down middle names. So it was kind of just something that Rachel wanted to do right from the get-go. So for our first boy, they would have my middle name, and for our first girl, they would have Rachel's middle name.
Yeah. So that is kind of how we came up with Edison Clark.
The girl name was much more difficult. We have spent so long talking about this, and we had said quite frequently, if it is a girl, we are going to be screwed because we cannot think of a name. But thankfully, we decided on a girl name like a week before we found out the gender. So we are all squared away, and it will be all right.
Yeah. Some of the front runners that I really liked was Vivian or Eliza. I also really liked names with Rose in it. And we did find someone in your genealogy that was Rosalind or something like that. And I like Rosalie, those kind of names.
Yeah, Rachel's top choice out of all of those would definitely be Eliza. But we know that that name is going to be very, very popular for a little while.
Because of Hamilton.
Yeah, it's fine. It's a good name, and we like the name. It's just that we thought we could find a different name that might not be so popular. And I also don't think I want people all over the place, especially because we do theater, be like, oh, you named him after the Hamilton character, because that's not the truth.
And I also have a cousin that named her baby Eliza with an A. And so that would be very close.
Yeah, so we just kind of looked around for a few other things. I also didn't want to stick to this whole letter thing. So we haven't quite decided, and of course, in the future, something could change, but depending on what gender this baby is, we may or may not use the name in the future. But I don't want to hold us to only using one letter for the first letter of our kid's name. Like, I don't want all of them to be E. So if we decided that the boy name was Edison and the girl name was Eliza and we were going to keep that, then if we had a third kid, I don't want it to be like, oh, well, you got to keep this E thing going.
Right. But typically what would happen is I would suggest a name that I would find on a baby name app, and Harrison would not like it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when you first hear a name, you immediately think of the people that you know. And if you know somebody with that name, you kind of have like a context of whether that name is good or bad. And I just wasn't a huge fan of a lot of the names. Not that all the people I know are bad, it's just that I would kind of like a name that's a little bit more fresh in my mind.
And when I suggested Jacqueline, he really liked that name. And what was it about that name that you liked?
I don't know. I just think it's a nice name. It's definitely an older name. Probably not as old as Edison, but I think that it sounds good. And you don't know a whole lot of people that have that name. When you think of Jacqueline, the first thing you think of is Jackie Kennedy, which we actually have kind of deviated. We've declared ourselves hypocrites. And if we have a girl and they are named Jacqueline, we will be calling them Jackie. We talked a lot about this because I very strongly feel that if we have a boy and name them Edison, that they don't be called Eddie or Ed. And for some reason, for a girl, I really don't see that big of a deal to call them Jackie instead of Jacqueline. But we did talk this over with my parents, and it's actually kind of a generational thing. My mom's mom, so my grandma, is a stickler that her sons go by their full name. But for her daughters, she might feel differently. Like she might feel like her daughter should use their full names, but she actually will regularly refer to them as a shortened name.
Yeah. And I remember the night that we officially decided on this name, Harrison said something like, so if it's a girl, we're going with Jacqueline, right? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I just didn't want to settle or make a decision yet. And he's like, why? And I said, because I really like it. And at that time, I really wanted a boy. And knowing like the name Jacqueline or thinking about it in my head just made me really excited to have a girl. And he was like, well, isn't that a good thing?
Yeah, I mean, like, you don't want to build it up in your brain that you want one gender so badly that if it's the other gender that you're upset about it, because at the end of the day, it's still your kid and you're going to love him no matter what. It seems like something that if you can avoid being upset about it, you really should.
Yeah. And then her middle name will be May. So Jackie May or Jacqueline May.
Yeah, so that would be the girl.
So some things that I'm really excited for, you know, either gender, like if we have a boy, he is going to look just like Harrison. And my heart already explodes when I think about Harrison and how much I love him, that thinking about this like baby version of him that we made together is just going to be the cutest thing I've ever seen.
We eventually do want to have both genders, but Rachel was really on this idea of having older brothers. She just really enjoyed that experience and just wanted a boy more.
And as a girl, I don't know, because like Harrison said, we eventually want to have both. So if we're going to have a boy and a girl, then I'd rather have a boy first, because as a girl, I really liked having older brothers, and that like older brother, little sister bond is really special.
Yeah, if you asked me before we actually were pregnant, I would have told you that I would rather have a girl first. I really didn't have a reason for that. I don't know, that's just how I saw it in my head, I guess. I do think that a lot of things when you think about yourself having kids do come from your family. Like, I feel like most people, when they're younger and you ask them how many kids they want, it's normally the same number that is in their family. And my parents did have a girl first, so maybe that's why it was that way. But I just wanted a girl first. But now I don't really have a strong preference. For a little while, we were leaning more towards boy first just because we had a name. And I knew it was going to be brutal to figure out a name for a girl.
But I think right now we're kind of at a place where we're just really excited.
Yeah, either way that it goes, we'll be really, really happy. And it's nice to know that we have agreed on the names and it's all good.
And when thinking about having a little girl, I just get really excited about like doing her hair. I'm imagining like, Harrison and I both have really dark hair. So I'm imagining like brown, little curly pigtails and, buying little ballet shoes and taking her to dance class.
Rachel has this like weird obsession with tiny shoes. Okay. Like, I don't understand why you need to put a kid in shoes before they can walk. I think that if you do that, it's more for the parent than it is for the kid. But every time we go into a shoe store, Rachel will go to like the little tiny kid shoes that are like size 0 or whatever. They're so tiny, and she'll find like the tiniest tap shoe possible, which is just hilarious because to tap, you have to have very good control over your foot. And the fact that like a kid who probably barely can even walk trying to tap is just really funny to me.
Yeah. But there's a lot of things about having a girl that are fun, but I think more of the girl things that are exciting to me happen a little bit later in their life.
I mean, I think that there's going to be a lot of fun stuff either way. And I've said it for a while, and I just really feel like the gender is not really a huge deal until your kid is a little bit older. When they're first born, it doesn't matter whether it's a boy or a girl. All it's going to do is eat, sleep, poop. And so I don't really think it changes a whole lot. The biggest thing that it changes is what stuff do people buy for them? Which section of the store do you shop in? All right, so those are the names that we've picked out for either a boy or a girl, and we're really excited to add either Edison or Jackie to our family soon.
Next time, we are going to talk about weeks 17 through 19 of pregnancy. Thanks for joining us.
See you next time.